Whereas you should turn on your camera and microphone when you speak. Please turn them back off again afterwards. Yeah, recording has started. So, prynawn da, croeso i'r cyfarfod, diolch am bawb am dod. Good afternoon, welcome to the Regeneration and Public Protection Scrutiny Committee on Tuesday, the 8th of March, 2022. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and may be broadcast via the authority's internet site. The images and sound recording may also be used for training purposes within the authority. So, going to agenda item 1, apologies for absence.
Councillor Scott Thomas, Chair.
Thanks, Mair. Malcolm?
Yes, I'll need to leave at 4:30, I'm afraid, Chair. I've got a mayor's function to attend.
No problem. Thanks for letting us know. Agenda item 2, declarations of interest. Nope. Okay, moving on. Agenda item 3, prevent and protect counter-terrorism duty, to consider a report from a Deputy Chief Executive. Alan?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'm going to be handing you straight over to Mr. Paul Lewis for this report, Chair, and it's good to see you back off holidays.
I don't know if it's good to be back. I got a stinking cold and I go away again tomorrow, so yeah, thanks for that. Paul?
Thanks, Alan. Thanks, Chair. Afternoon, members. Thank you for inviting for this afternoon scrutiny report. Committee has requested a report be brought on the local authorities' statutory duties in relation to counter-terrorism and security, as outlined within the Counter-Terrorism and Security Act 2015. I won't go through the report in detail. I'm sure members have already gone through it. So just to give a quick overview, following the 9/11 attacks, the UK central government launched its counter-terrorism strategy called Contest. Contest consists of 4 strands, namely to pursue, prevent, to protect and prepare. This report identifies the 2 strands of the strategy that the local authority currently have a statutory duty to respond to, and will soon have an additional duty in relation to the protect duty. So very quickly, members, just to outline the definition of terrorism. Obviously, we automatically think, whenever we use the word terrorism, of serious international terrorism and terrorist organisations. But members will be aware that obviously through some tragic events in the UK, namely into the late MP Joe Cox and Sir David Amess, that lone actors are also responsible for terrorism on our shores, and this presents a particular risk for tackling this form of terrorism. So the local authority has a duty under the legislation, under the prevent element. That is namely to prevent people being drawn into terrorism. How we discharge this duty is the authority as a prevent lead officer, and it's his role across the organisation to ensure that all frontline services are aware of the threats of terrorism, how to spot individuals who could be brought into terrorism activities, and more importantly, how to report and refer individuals of concern to the relevant partners. The way we discharge that as a local authority is our prevent officer reports in a governance perspective to a corporate safeguarding group. That's made up of members from all the frontline departments and dealing with some of our most vulnerable residents within the community. Through the Prevent Lead, we roll out the RAP training programme. That's a home office programme that's delivered online, which teaches individuals of the signs to look for, what the risk factors are, and how frontline officers can report those concerns. We also receive, as a local authority, an annual report, a counter-terrorism profile specific for our area, and this helps the prevent officer tailor any information packages, any intelligence to our frontline services, specifically tailored to the risks we face as a local authority. As also part of the prevent duty, we also have a statutory duty to have what's called a channel panel. That's delivered in Merthyr Tydfil on a Cwmtaf footprint with our partners in Rhondda and Taff, and currently the chair for the channel panel is one of our officers in Merthyr. The channel panel is a multi-agency panel, and the purpose of the panel is to receive referrals from WEC2 of individuals they think are vulnerable and are at risk of being drawn into terrorism and terrorism ideologies. Channel panel will then sit with a variety of experts and will consider what interventions and support can be given to that vulnerable individual in order to divert them from any terrorist activity or to be drawn into any particular ideology. The channel panel meets on a monthly basis and, as I say, consists of mainly statutory partners, but at any time we can bring in any relevant agencies who we consider could be of benefit in supporting that individual. So in an overview, that's the work of Prevent. That is the work of Channel Panel. Within the report 3.8, I give a breakdown onto how the referral process works in terms of when individual is identified at risk, how that is fed into WEC2, how WEC2 will assess, and from there, there'll be two strands that will either come through the Channel Panel for us to try and intervene and support a vulnerable individual, or it could be police-led operations. Obviously, if there's an immediate risk or a threat, the police have got the resources and the expertise to deal with that directly. In terms of governance and resourcing of contest, there's a Welsh contest board, which obviously is chaired by our police partners. Welsh Government also sit on that board. We have a Cwmtaf Morgannwg contest board, which obviously is for ourselves and our partners in RCT and Bridgend. And then at a local level, we've got our Prevent delivery and we've got our Channel Panel. So in terms of governance, that's the structure that we report into and also reports down to us on the various delivery platforms and the various threat risks that we receive. Internally, as a local authority, obviously I'm presenting to you today at Scrutiny, an overview of the work on this statutory duty, but we also meet, as I said, with the corporate safeguarding group and internally amongst the corporate management team. So we have a governance structure that we're always keeping elected members, senior officers within the council and frontline practitioners up to date with the risks that present themselves and to keep partners informed of the risks in our communities. In terms of future landscaping, members will obviously be aware of the tragic events at the Manchester Arena in May 2017 at the Ariana Grande concert. 23 people unfortunately lost their lives and over 1,000 people were injured. As a result of that, there's been an ongoing public inquiry, and one of the strands that has come from that public inquiry is a proposal to make the statutory duty of protect across organisations such as local authorities to ensure that we can risk assess and reasonably mitigate measures to prevent the risk of a terrorist incident. The Home Office have carried out a detailed consultation. The consultation is now closed and they are at the finalisation of bringing in the legislation. Once brought in, the local authority would be then subject to this duty. The main area for us to consider within this duty is looking at publicly accessible locations within the county borough and ensuring that counter-terrorism measures are inbuilt within those processes. In readiness for this duty, the local authority has followed Welsh Government and WEC2 guidance in setting up our own Protective Preparedness Security Group, the PSPG. That's chaired by myself at present. It involves partners from across the local authority who are involved with any corporate projects, building of new infrastructure to ensure the counter-terrorism measures are built in at the earliest opportunity of any infrastructure changes within the local authority. Part of the group is also to look retrospectively at public accessible locations and ensuring that we build in counter-terrorism measures and reduce any risk to individuals at publicly accessible locations. We're very much still in the infancy of the establishment of this group, but we're already at notable support from colleagues at WEC2 on a variety of projects. We're already seeing a benefit in working cross-departmental, and this is now being built into the infrastructure of any regeneration projects, any building projects, such as our 3 to 16 schools, that counter-terrorism measures are instantly built in to any project plan. So we're already seeing fruits of our labour from that initial setup of the group. And as that progresses, I can see it becoming a mainstay in terms of how we implement any new structures within the local authority. Resourcing of this duty obviously is new for us as a local authority. We're still looking at what that means in terms of resourcing, and obviously the authority carries out various capacity exercises, and should there be a need for any additional resource, that will be captured within our capacity exercise. So members, I think I've taken you on a whistle-stop tour of the report, and I think at this stage I'll be happy to accept any questions. The only thing I would say, members, with a caveat, is in terms of sensitive information that we're obviously party to, I'm going to be restricted in what I can actually divulge within a public forum such as Scrutiny, but I will try and provide as much information as I can.
Thanks, Paul. I'm going to open it to questions. Kevin?
Yeah, obviously identity is
Us,
not disclosed. Have they had any referrals in relation to individuals across the Rhondda Cynon landscape? And my second question is, do we have the support of WEC2 in relation to our building programme, and also things like the acquisition of the town centre shopping precinct in relation to having some sort of understanding of the requirements of those types of buildings? Thank you.
Yes, Councillor O'Neill, I can confirm we have cases that are referred through the channel panel at the CUMTAF footprint. So referrals are being received. And secondly, in relation to the support of WEC2, we've been allocated a regional officer, and he has already been forefront in a number of meetings around town centre development, and they are a real useful resource and they're a particular benefit to the authority.
Thanks, Paul.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. I'm going to have to remember there's two Kevins in the emails, in the meeting. So yeah, apologies for that. Any other questions? Sorry, Councillor Gibbs.
Yeah, the other one. Just a quick question, Paul. I don't know if you can answer it online in this public forum. Are we allowed to say who the prevent officer is for the county borough?
Yes, that's fine. It's Robert Goff. Rob is our head of the local resilience unit. I'm sure you've all dealt with Rob through his emergency planning role. So Rob's got all the skills needed in terms of the counter-terrorism duty. Rob has also recently been upskilled and trained on hostile vehicle mitigation. So again, for a local authority, we've got a real good internal resource that's benefiting the services.
Lovely, thank you, Paul. And one final point for me. This is probably something to look at going forward. Whilst I understand the report today is just an overview, I think it'd be good for scrutiny members, whether that's in a closed session, to perhaps have a look at the numbers and the reports without any sensitive information, obviously.
Yep, I mean, that's something I can go back to. I can obviously speak to the Home Office guidance that we received through as to what they are happy that is disclosed outside the sensitive setting. But in terms of an exempt report that could come to scrutiny, I can certainly explore that, Councillor Gibbs, and I'd be happy to bring whatever I'm allowed to share. I'd certainly be happy to bring and share with members.
Because I do think it'll be a good idea for members to have an idea of, to a degree, of what's actually going on in the borough. So thank you for that, Paul. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Meeting.
Yeah, thanks, Kev. Any other questions? I got a couple of questions around the training. Are we currently delivering training out in youth clubs and schools? I know it mentions this in the report.
Across the organisation, Councillor Davis, Chair, as you know, we've got youth support services. Our schools have all got various prevent leads within those individual sectors. They receive specific training, and in terms of what they then deliver into the community, it's more eyes and ears as to what's going on rather than taking that training to a further extent. But across the organisation, we've got prevent champions would be the correct word to use, who are upskilled, who train internally, train the trainer. So we're always pushing that message to all staff. The Home Office RAP training is currently being revamped, and that as soon as that comes into being, we will again roll that out across the organisation. The other thing that we're including is RAP training will become part of the corporate induction training. So any new employee to the authority would be expected to go through RAP training as part of their induction to work with the council. So again, it's getting that message out, what to look for, how to refer, and to ensure that we're working as a collective rather than individual services.
Great. I think it's vital across all like sectors within the local authority, social services, mental health, so they can identify what to look for, and then early prevention with schools and targeting young children and stuff. That would be great. I did have something else. In terms of the cost to the local authority, is a great cost, or will we have to take on additional staff in terms of training? And
I'm hoping not. Through working smarter and working across the public protection, the new service that's been established. As you know, within our community safety team, we've got community cohesion officers. So again, we can share that burden in terms of the getting that message out in the training, through train the trainer, and we can upskill more officers. So I'm hoping working as a collective will not need additional capacity, but by working as a public protection service, we can utilise all the officers in cascading that message. If you take community cohesion, for instance, they do a lot of work on hate crime. That can be the infancy of starting, unfortunately, to people taking it to a further extreme. So again, through targeting our community cohesion work, through our social services, targeting children who may be vulnerable and picking up from them where they may be having adverse influence into their day-to-day lives, we can pick out those vulnerabilities and support those individuals in making better decisions.
great, thanks, Paul. I got one more question, but I'll let Councillor Gibbs come in now.
Thanks, Chair. It's on the back of one of your questions anyway, Chair. With regards to the training, Paul, you said obviously new staff coming into the authority will go through induction training. Will that also apply to new members as well? Because obviously we've got an election coming up now in May, and there's potentially going to be a whole raft of new councillors. So will that be included in the councillor induction training?
Most definitely. Obviously, after the tragic event with Sir David Amess, members may recall I sent out a specific guidance document to all elected members, because unfortunately, in the world we're in today, everybody in the public eye could be at risk. So yes, most definitely, in terms of member surgeries, etc., we will spread out best practice and hope with that. There is a question from Rebecca Stone in the chat room in relation to the referral process on 3.8, where we have taken an individual into channel, and the individual exits on the basis that we feel that adequate interventions have been put in place. There is a more automatic review process, so that individual will be reviewed at periodic dates with our partners at WEC2 and South Wales Police to see if there's been any warning markers and to see if it has been successful.
Thanks, Paul. Kev, is that it? Yeah.
Yeah, that was it from me. Thanks very much, Paul.
Well, Alan?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just to add to the or build on the question from Councillor Gibbs about induction specifically for new members. That's something that we're currently putting a lot of thought into corporately to make sure that we can improve that process for new members coming in, and that we haven't missed any important elements over the first quarter of new members coming into the local authority. So I think that's a really important point you make, Councillor Gibbs.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you, Alan. And I did have on the back of my mind that I'm sure you guys run this department like an iron fist. I'm very open as well. So I would have expected that as the answer. So well done, you passed.
Thanks, both. Last question. This might be a silly question. Alert levels. Do we have like a counter-terrorism alert levels for like Merthyr, Cardiff, and where do we fare in terms of levels to say a city like Cardiff?
The alert level perhaps won't go down to a specific individual authority, but there will be a national alert level. Obviously, if a threat is imminent, they'll raise the level when incidents do occur. I think at the moment we're at substantial risk. And obviously what's expected of us there, we will have briefings from the Home Office that will tell us certain things that may be at risk through intelligence they receive, and then we can cascade that down then in terms of training and local issues that we think may be at risk. So yeah, the threat level is determined at national level, and it will be specific, but if the police do have specific intelligence for a particular area, they won't change the alert level, but obviously they'll know the area they need to put most resources in, but we do get national levels, Chair.
Great. That's it for me. Thanks, Paul. Any other questions? Any comments? No. But the only one I have is around the training. I think is essential. It goes out to all departments. I'm sure that's what you're planning on doing anyway. But you know, I'm picking up what Councillor Gibbs said that you know, for new members as well. It is you know, I did speak to Democratic Services a few months ago about members' home addresses being, you know, on the internet and stuff. You know, it can, especially some of the levels of stuff that we do report, it can be a worrying time for members. Okay, that's it from me. Thanks, Paul. Moving on, agenda item 4, corporate self-evaluation, working life, to consider the report of the Deputy Chief Executive. Is this you out?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I just introduced the report. As you just introduced, it's the corporate self-evaluation for working life. If members will recall, this is a report that comes before the relevant scrutiny every year, and basically it comments on the department, the directorate's performance. This performance is measured over 3 questions. The questions are outcomes. The second question is provision and delivery. And the third question that we answer is on leadership and management. After evaluating our performance over the year, then as a department, we make a judgment against each of those questions, and that gives us an overall comment and a judgment of the performance of the working life service areas over the last year's period. Now, what I'll do, working life, most of the elements of working life are actually fall within the regeneration service. Not all of them, but the vast majority that we've made judgments against. So if I can ask Chris Long just to very briefly touch upon the main points on each of the judgment, and then we'll come back and take questions and debate the judgment that we've actually given, which is good. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, thanks, Al. So thanks, Chair. And as Alan alluded to, I'm just going to skim through some of the context, I think, because Alan has set the background appropriately and the judgment based on some of the key questions. As members will be aware, there is quite a scientific process sitting underneath the judgment. I know members will be aware it's not a case of, you know, just arriving at a conclusion. Right? There's lots of work takes place for service managers in terms of check and challenge across our services, and it's quite deep rooted as well in terms of engaging all staff. So teams and focus groups are set up, and really we scrutinise each other wholeheartedly in terms of, you know, the outcomes, leadership, and various tools are used really to arrive at the decision, right? And that process takes it's taken us the best part of 4 months. actually, and perhaps a little bit longer, right? Which is built obviously into a work program moving forward. So just wanted to mention that how the judgments are derived at. So as Alan's alluded to, the conclusion in terms of 21-22 service assessment is good, and that's based on a number of judgments, really, a number of performance indicators. One you'll see at Appendix 2, which is a strategy on the page, which does give it a little bit of an insight in terms of some of the key indicators that shape our programs. But obviously, as you can see at 5.4, there's 5 or 6 bullet points there that are formed an opinion. Now, some of those, right, are based on great connectivity, right, internally, lots of collaboration in terms of project planning, and that's both internally and externally as well. I think over the last year in particular, I think, you know, our partnership working has been critical, really, to service delivery, and I think we referenced that in the report. Both, you know, our strategic partnerships across the service areas have worked really, really well, we felt, under difficult circumstances through COVID, really. And the report is, you know, based on a situation which we've never faced before. So to come out as a service assessment as good, I think we should all be pretty pleased about, really. I think I draw reference to COVID in 5.4, especially around the grant support as well. And, you know, I tend to mention that at more scrutinies. I think the heartbeat of our economic recovery has been how we've responded to the challenge to keep business afloat, right, through, you know, Economic Resilience Fund 1, 2, 3, 4. You know, we're up over 40 million at the moment that we provided support to all businesses in the local economy, and I think out of 22 local authorities, you know, Merthyr was very high in the top 1 or 2 right the way through that process, really. And, you know, I think we mobilised ourselves very, very well, and that's still ongoing, mind, right? We still have an economic growth fund that we're about to launch, so that won't stop. And I think what we don't want to do, and these are some of the legacy developments we need to pick up, is how dynamic that has been through COVID, and not lose sight of it, to build on that momentum, isn't it? Really, to build on it now of how departments have come together, and how can we take that forward in terms of, you know, sharing our business support intelligence across corporate organisations. So just wanted to mention that. I think some of the other developments which have been significant, and as we alluded to at the bottom of 5.4, that list is not exhaustive in terms of some of the takeaway points, really, that have been clearly evident as part of our support over the last year, ranging from the bus station to the John Selwood community track, absolutely brilliant. You know, the launch of Cyfarthfa Foundation and £1.2 million of revenue. So these are some of the I think indicators that shape some of our, you know, determining factors in terms of the judgment, right? Now this leads nicely into 5.5, right, in terms of linkages to the recovery transformation improvement plan, and some of the governance structures leading to the creation of an economic vision, a new partnership, a new board, and obviously the amount of effort that went into it and engaging with local businesses over this period, really, to see how we can provide economic recovery benefits to local businesses. I think, Chair, I think in terms of where we want to be, 6.1, I think sets a scene, I think, in terms of the work that's underway, right? And obviously what we tried to do with this report in terms of the work that's underway and what we need to do next, we've listed at 7.1 and 7.2, some of our top operational projects, and obviously some of the priorities for the service area moving forward, which chime really with the vision that we've created as a local authority. Definitely chimes with some of the zones throughout the county borough, both north and south. And I think those that both 7.1, 7.2, I think really set the scene really for how the local authority from a place building perspective, right, is going to change potentially over in the short to medium term. And obviously, as members will know, there are various governance structures and boards and delivery teams aligned to all of those top operational projects within predominantly my service area. So to conclude, I think the judgment as a team, we are satisfied with good, and happy to take any questions, comments, Chair.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Before the chair comes back in, I think, as Chris said, over a very difficult period, then we've demonstrated internal impact within the local authority. We've built new strategic structures. We've made impactful operational links with other departments, which has enabled us to really support the economy. But I think so much of our work is so impactful on the public as well, and hopefully going into the next period, we'll see the further physical and economic transformation of Merthyr. So yeah, good year.
There's a question. There's a quite early question, Ellie, in the chat room. Sorry, Chair.
Yeah, do you want to go with that first, Chris?
Yeah. So the thing is, in terms of the 5 ways of working, future generations, I think what we try to do is, in a lot of our work, look at the longevity and sustainability of what we're trying to do, right? Not easy, right? One example of how hard it can be in terms of long-term planning thinking. Members will be aware of the report we brought through to scrutiny on the loss of European funding as an example, right? And the unsurety really of, the loss that's going to give us to our employability section, right? So I think, obviously the long-term thinking in terms of the Future Generation Act and making sure we build sustainable models is really going to challenge us, not as only as a local authority, but UK generally. And we're starting to see on this point, we're starting to see what the new replacement funds could look like, right? But they still are some way away. So I think it's a good question as posed. I think the collaboration component, one of the indicators of the 5 ways of working, is really key. I think we've really showed this year, the last year, collaboration is key to everything we do. That's both internally and externally, right? I think sometimes I think the local authority, my service area, is better placed to deliver things. We don't have to deliver it all on times, right? There are agencies that could deliver as equally well, and I think we're showing that through the Community Renewal Fund, where we play into our partner strengths. So collaboration and integration is very, very key to us moving forward. So I think generally, Rebecca, I think it does apply. We are thinking that way, right, to the 15 years. I think what prohibits us sometimes is the longevity of the funding, both from a revenue and a capital, because more often than not, it can be short term, right? CRF, as an example, is 6 months, right? Doesn't help that long-term thinking, but it is always at the back of our mind. I think that's the point I wanted to get over. So I don't know if that answers the question, Rebecca.
Yeah, I think it does. And in terms of working with partners, third sector and businesses, I think that's vital in helping to achieve all of these goals. It's referenced in the report anyway. I call Councillor O'Neill in. He has a question.
Yeah, a couple of questions and observations really. In the pre-meet, we discussed at some length the report. Hillary made some valid points about, and I would concur. It's quite a heavy report. It's a really important report, and to do it justice as scrutiny is difficult because it's quite jargon heavy. It's in project speak, a lot of it, which I know that because I know where it all comes from. I think what's lost as well is the simplistic. It's in the first page, 3.1. Critically reflective about outcomes, service provision, and leadership and management. I think that should be highlighted because it gets lost in the rest of the text there. Because those things, when you look at that, as you said, this area, it's easy to see the outcomes often. Service provision, a leadership and partnership. I think I'll come on to that, but we thought initially that maybe you've been undermarked a little bit, you know, because when you talk about business, we know that we were first and second. I can't remember whether we were first or second or joined first with Powys in relation to what was done as a business. How we aligned our services, revs and bevs and all that, you know, aligned them all up, got a database of business that we never had before. And we got out to those people and kept a lot of business in place, saved a lot of businesses and developed a lot of businesses at the most difficult time. Physical developments, when you talk about the building programme, again, we discussed that and said, well, one building is not the same as another building. Some have a very weighty political weight, don't they? When we talk about maybe the new theatre, when we talk about the YMCA, any things that would have a heritage element, they are far more difficult sometimes than some of the building projects, shall I say, for the bus station, which once we got them to sign up to it, we actually got it done in double quick time, didn't we? So I think that was the final thing was coming back to leadership and partnership. I think that's the only thing is across the whole organisation, talent management, one-to-ones, capability, all these things within your team. And you have got a good team, but it needs to be, I think, clearly spread across every area that we've got a robust framework for that. Another point that was made, and I hope I'm not stealing other people's thunder, is that it would be good sometimes with a document like this to almost have a coffee morning away. It reminded me of a cabinet briefing where people could have a simplistic understanding about what it's all about. Because I compared it, I got 50 emails in my inbox. I want to deal with them all. But what I do is I get through them all, so I read them, and I don't read any of them. So I've achieved nothing. If we approach scrutiny that way, then we achieve nothing because it's a weighty document. It's hard to read. It's hard to get your head around. If we go through it, and I am speaking maybe on behalf of some of the members who are not elected members who haven't had sight to some of this stuff and had a detail of it, it's quite difficult to read through. And they thought that maybe that would be helpful to have a more informed briefing on some of the stuff there. I don't want to speak for others, but I found it difficult to get my head around a lot of it, and I haven't read it for about 6 months. And there's a certain jargon there. You start reading it, you don't read it, you just go past it. So, but very pleased with the assessment, very pleased with the document, and you know, I know this area well, former cabinet member here, so I know what's going on. So, well done, thank you.
Yeah, I'd just like to come in on the back of what Kevin said then. We just discussed it previously about having a coffee morning. I think that, you know, we've all agreed that we think that would be a good way forward, you know, whether it's, you know, all of our doing to get this going forward. You know, I maybe could have picked this up, and I think with the next administration that would be a really good way to work, you know, informal chats. You know, we're talking about many different projects, and maybe having some training specific for scrutiny in terms of Cyfarthfa Foundation, you know, Transforming Towns program, all of that, so everybody gets an understanding. because it's, you know, it is a lot to go through, and I can fully appreciate your self-evaluation. You know, it's over 100 pages, and to condense it down into something for us to read is really, really challenging, I can imagine. So, but I think for the next administration, whoever that might be, whether any of us that, you know, are on this committee, it would be good just to have informal chats and some training around the specific projects going forward. I don't know how you think that would work, Alan, Chris.
Yeah, I think that would be welcomed, right? It really would, at the start of the self-assessment journey, right? Before we get on off the starting blocks, is to explain, you know, strip it back down, isn't it? What is it all about? You know, why the 3 questions? You know, who are these staff who are the staff associated with, you know, asking teams questions? How deep rooted do we go? What tools do we use? You're right, Chair, because it's difficult. It's a difficult period, right? Sometimes to switch into what and the other thing we're trying to do is for it not to become a period, for it to become part of our ongoing work, right? So it doesn't become alien to teams, because what more often than not, what could happen is, God, like, you know, it's self-assessment time, you know, it's not like that, right? It might feel as if it is, but the tools we use on reflection, right, in terms of what are we doing, how are we doing it, how well are we doing it, is really part of our DNA internally, but more so externally as well, because that external function is all about the grants we give out. Well, how well are they performing? You know, so I think it'd be good to unpick it all, right? So that when we do come back then to present 2023-24 valuation, I think members will have a better understanding of the journey, right? And I think Maria Purnell, who I always thank in helping us pull this together, is the monster is a monster, and you know, the detail around underneath it is an incredible tools and processes, right? And then when we come to pull the report together, it's really hard to get a summary together for members. Then, you know, you read the report and thinking, well, okay, you know, what's the terminology? So to unpick it all, right, at the start of the process, I think will be welcome, guys.
Yeah, I'd just like to add there. I think we discussed, Chair, last year, a different sort of way in the run-up or preparation, not just the self-evaluation reports, but the scrutiny process, so that we have that conversation, and then out to that conversation, we can almost co-produce officers and scrutiny members what you want to drill into. Because if you look at 7.1 of the report, what do we do next? I mean, each of those individual items could be a scrutiny report in their own right.
Yeah, you're right, Alan. In many respects, they have been in the last 2 years. They have been. So in my mind, whether this is the high level report, isn't it? And you build a work program then around the priorities and projects.
Agree. I think us having informal chats, some training, you know, specific to this scrutiny, rather than all members, you know, specific to our scrutiny, and yeah, and the co-production stuff, I think is vital. I think it's hard for individuals who've not worked our way to grasp how we could work, but I think once, you know, the bulb comes on, I think it would really help us going forward. Derek, did you want to come in?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I just think we got to reflect back over the 5 years since we formed this scrutiny committee. There's not many, I think, who are on here from the very, very beginning. As far as members, cooperative members are, I know I've been here from the start, and I've seen how it's transformed, you know, from being the Regeneration and Public Protection scrutiny media as was, and we come up down to 10 to midnight now on the 5 year journey, and it's transformed again now with other parts coming into this portfolio. And I just feel whoever takes this on in the next 5 years, wherever that committee is when it's formed, need to have a workshop just to go through it, because this portfolio, Alan's portfolio, that was so broad and it's so deep and so much to it, right? It does need, you know, I think a couple of sessions to get everybody's heads around it, because it's quite large now.
Yeah, I totally agree. You know, some of the certain projects could have a workshop on their own. You know, they're hefty projects. I can't remember how long the self-evaluation has been in this form. When it came in, you were probably thinking, "Oh God, there's more work for us to do." But do you feel this? You know, be frank. I have the. Do you feel this really helped your delivery as a team?
I go first. Yeah, I think it is, and it's not just the self-evaluation report, but what I'd like to think that the way that we've operated over, especially the last couple of years, is to have that reflective internal partnership discussion as well as that external partnership discussion, so that we can all understand the problems that we're all trying to tackle, but from our different disciplines. I think that's worked well, Chris, hasn't it? And we structure a lot of our internal communication now along those lines. So it's embedded the principle, I think, Chair, as well as the actual process itself, because this is sort of iterated, this process for us, because it's an opportunity for us to reflect on quite a specific, very broad, but quite a specific work program. But I suppose the difference is it needs to include everyone, all our stakeholders.
Chris, you got something to say?
Yeah, look, just only to add, look, we mature professionals, yeah, we really, when you think about it, right? And you know, we use these tools to our best advantage, right? And if some of the tools we're not using are right, we get the ability to sometimes change it, right? And that's the model, isn't it? Really, that's the model on reflection, whether it be 360 or one-to-ones or focus on performance. You know, I'd like to think we get an honest team who are quite mature as well. They've grown. You know, some of those service managers have been with us now 10, 15 years, right? And they've been on this journey for that long, right? And you know, we're adjustable and flexible in terms of understanding how the self-evaluation process can help our work. That's the other side of this, isn't it? And I think, you know, seriously, the days are gone when that email comes through, we think, oh God, here we go, self-evaluation time. We've all been there, right? We've all been there. It's not like that. I'm not lying, right? Okay, maybe some of us might be thinking it, but we're thinking, okay, well, hang on, we're already doing some of this stuff anyway. It's just realigning the effort and energy into a different framework.
Yeah, it's really good to hear. Before I call Councillor Gibbs in, Paul, did you want to come in there?
Yeah, it was just to follow up on what Councillor Thomas identified as the width of Alan's portfolio now in terms of regeneration, housing and public protection. Obviously, the report presented to you today is very much based on the working life strategy. So if you take from my world in public protection, a lot of our work is more about safety rather than working life. So even this report is only giving a portion of Alan's portfolio, and probably how we bring out all the other work, and like Chris's world with housing and the work that's done around preventing the most supporting the most vulnerable. That's not even touched in terms of the strategy on the page here. So the width of the portfolio is huge, Alan, in terms of how we bring out all the work that's done across that. That's a challenge for us, as well as the self-evaluation.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
I totally agree with you, Paul. It's impossible to present it all in this type of focus in one report. It probably takes 3 evaluations, but I think as it matures further, I think there could there could be a process, Chair, of scrutinising how all those functions interact to bring about outcomes which wouldn't have otherwise happened. I think that's the natural progression into the next administration scrutiny.
Great, I think that'd be really good. Councillor Gibbs?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm not gonna cover everything that's just been said, because I think you guys had a really good and interesting debate, and an honest debate as well. I just have two very quick questions on some of the information in the report itself. On page 19, the table at the top under priority, bullet point there, you've got realign the economic growth strategy and create an economic recovery board, and that's down as in progress. So I was just wondering which where are you coming to on the in progress, because the economic recovery board is already set up, isn't it? So I'm just wondering, is that to do with the economic strategy?
Yeah, I picked that up when I was going back through the report this morning, Councillor Gibson. That looks like it's an error, because obviously one of the first things we did in that journey was to create the Economic Recovery Board. Well, yeah. As you know, you were one of the founding members. So yeah, that needs to be revised, that particular bullet point.
Fantastic. So technically that one is completed, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. That's what I thought, Al. I just wanted to make sure. And it was where's my other one? Page 26. Yeah, page 26 on the SOAP. Key performance indicators, actually. The second one down, participants who gain a qualification at the end of an out of work program. Now you've given yourself a general performance score of adequate, but I can see the target for 21-22 was 49. You've achieved 111. Is that really reflective if it's that much ahead on the third quarter?
I can see what you mean. I'll have to go back through the previous. Let me just check something a minute. Because the program C4W are ongoing year on year, 17, 18, 18, 19, 19, 20. I would have to check the data.
Because from my eyes, Chris, looking at it, it's only 18, 19 that it wasn't achieved. But perhaps I'm looking at an unrealistic, perhaps we were looking at an unrealistic target in 18, 19.
Yeah, I'll have to, yeah, because 2021 was double outputs as well. Okay, well spotted.
It's like I know you said all the it's all done by computer for you. So I just wonder, couple of tweaks here and there. You may be going from a good up a little bit further up.
That's a good point. That's a good point. It might be that we were just 1 point under the threshold of being good. I'll go back to Deb Newton on that one. That's a really good point. I'll check back through the papers underneath just to make sure that our formulas were correct, etc. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Lovely. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Kev. Yeah, one last question from me. In terms of the three areas under outcomes, you've got adequate. What is letting you down in terms of the outcomes? What's letting you down from that becoming good?
It's yeah, and I asked myself that question, right?
Have you answered it?
Well, kind of. It's back to Alan's service area. So broad, isn't it? It's so broad, right? And you know, to make a consistent judgment based on public protection against employability and housing, physical regeneration, collaboration. It's a real tough one, guys. It really, really, really is, right? I think some of the things we've drawn reference to in the report, I think in pages, let me draw reference to some stuff where I think we were a little bit short, right? And the things we need to improve, because if you look at page, I might buy for the service delivery, you know, if you look at, give me a second, guys, let me scroll down. It comes. So, basically, right, without going into too much detail, we analysed this to see how much we could push the boundaries, right? And there were more adequate in our some of our service areas that wasn't tipping over into goods, right? So on average, we were adequate. The service judgment was more adequate in more service areas than good, right? I think we could, look, at the end of the day, a lot of it is subjective acceptance, right? To a degree, and I think, not forgetting our last year's judgment was adequate anyway. It was overall adequate, right? This year's good. So as a team, we thought, okay, you know, we spent 4 months working on it. Do we really want to drill in another month on squeezing it for good? We took the decision no, right? Because there was nothing significant, right, that we could say, okay. Now, the fact that Councillor Gibbs has mentioned that point on employability, is that now gonna tip it into good? Who knows?
You could live in hope, Chris.
just one other point with the outcomes within several parts of the service areas around economic regeneration, then some of the outcomes outside our control, because there's so many external population level factors around the indicators around economic performance, which is outside our control. So we might be the best performing service in the world, but obviously a lot of the outcomes we count are dependent on wider macro issues. So it is a difficult one.
Yeah, and an example of that is if you look at business births, business deaths, right? We can support the business to start, right? If it's ours, we can do everything we possibly can to keep it surviving. But if it's not ours, if it's with Business Wales or Wales Cooperative Centre, so on this point about we can only control what we can control in the terms of PIs and the data, right? And this is exactly the same with job outputs, isn't it? At the end of the day, from a C4W Bridges performance perspective, yes, jobs, but that's only one dimension of our employability zone, isn't it? DWP control that machine. So our outcomes based on our own influences, I would have probably thought they're excellent, right? But in a broader national PI database, it's adequate.
Okay, thanks both. Paul?
Yeah, from a public protection side of things, Councillor Gibbs, I think our core objectives have been stringed by the pandemic. So obviously what we would like to have achieved of objectives for the different public protection areas had to be put to one side and all resource thrown at the pandemic. So that's probably scuppered where we would like to have been and has led it to an adequate in terms of what we would have liked to have achieved in terms of outcomes based against what we actually achieved while still having to deal with the pandemic. So it's probably some for Chris's side the same. The pandemic and in and out of lockdown, it's stymied a lot of the projects that we had in place. So I don't think the pandemic's assisted either.
No, and you're absolutely right, Paul. And it was Councillor Davis's question, not mine.
That's fine. I just want to ask that question because, like Chris, you alluded to last year was adequate overall. I thought you underscored yourself last year, and I probably think you're probably underscoring yourself a little bit this year as well. I think you are performing really, really well. There is always areas for improvement with everybody, you know. Even my mother will tell you that about myself as well. So yeah, so like I think it's a really good report. It is hard to read, as other members have said, but it is a lot of work to put into a small document. And you know, do you want us to how do you want us to do this? You know, do you want us to agree to this now? I know we have in the past. Yeah. Okay, so would all members like to sorry, before I go on to that, is there any other questions from anybody else? Any comments? No. So yeah, could you put your hand up, raise your hand if you're in agreement with the judgment of this report? Yep. Anybody? Thanks, everybody. Can you lower your hand? Is anybody against the judgment? No. It looks like we're all in support of your judgment. Thank you very much. So we'll move on to agenda item 5, asset management, to consider the report of the Deputy Chief Executive.
Okay, thanks, Chair. I'm going to call Lisa Emerson in to take us through the report. But before I do that, if I can just explain the journey that brought Lisa and the asset management scrutiny report to this particular scrutiny. If you recall, we've gone through several stages of development, both as a department and as an authority. Now, we established the commercial unit last year, which incorporated procurement. Now, procurement has sat for many years within finance. Similarly, estates, which is a very corporate function, has sat within neighbourhood services, along with property. So in the journey of restructuring the organisation and making our governance structure stronger, Ellis felt that we needed to take the truly corporate elements of the work undertaken by some vital departments out from within service areas and put in a corporate place. Now, it was just before Christmas, procurement and commercialisation, which we were setting up, estates and property moved into my service area. Now, the reason, I mean, the commercial one is self-explanatory, but the reason that these 3 services moved over to myself is an interim holding position. Now, as you'll be aware from previous council reports, which have been approved, we're currently out to advert for a new Director of Corporate Services and Resources. When that post has been appointed and settled in, then the aim is to move these corporate services, creating corporate property, and obviously we're establishing the commercialisation unit. They move across from my service into the corporate finance and resources directorate. So this is why Lisa and Chris and Paul Davis are currently sitting in my service area. So Lisa, if you can take us through the report, and we'll have a debate.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Chair. Yes, so the asset management plan that we have at the moment, and it's on our website. I'm sure all members have seen the corporate asset management plan. that's actually expired now. So we've been working, you know, over the past 12, 18 months in drafting our new asset management plan going forward. So we would like to take that to full council shortly. But before doing that, we wanted to be able to present it to Scrutiny to take any comments or questions and you know, debate the contents of that really. So that's the purpose of the report today. The draft asset management plan has been attached as an appendix, so hopefully you've had an opportunity to have a little look at that. Essentially, it sets out our plan now going forward for managing our property portfolio, and it's split into a number of areas. It gives an overview of our whole portfolio, but it also details the major projects that that we're involved with and that the authority are taking forward corporately. And the other main area really then is the action plan. So that's a plan of our major things going forward. So in addition to the projects, we have an action plan that we will work on over that the next 5-year period. So I just wanted to give Scrutiny Committee an opportunity to look at that, you know, and to raise anything. Just one note from me, there is an action in the action plan at the moment, number 5. That's a housing related action in relation to HMOs. The strategy around that has changed, so I've been asked to remove that. So in the new plan that we take to full council, that action number 5 will be removed. I don't think I need to provide any more information. Like I said, you've seen the draft plan, so I'm more than happy to take any questions that anybody might have.
Thanks, Lisa. Any questions from anyone, members or Councillor O'Neill?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think I've got the right document, progress against previous assets management plan. Because I was a bit confused by what was said by action number 5 then. Because the one I got, continue to develop service asset management plans, is that number 5?
Sorry, so that that appendix, so those are updates on the actions that were in the old plan.
Right.
So yeah, sorry if that's confusing. The action 5 that I've just referred to in terms of the HMO is the new action plan that's in the draft asset management plan.
Right, I'm just looking.
Page 64, Kev.
Page 64, yeah, I got it. Page 64, okay. 64, 61, 61. Just yeah, trying to get back to
It's a coloured schedule, so I think they ranked red, amber and green, and it's one of the high priority actions, so it's a red action and it was number 5. That
right.
one will be removed.
Okay, I mean, I've misread it because I was looking at the other plan and looking at questions based on that. I don't know if they'll be relevant in the updated plan, but I was looking whether we've got a timeline for our corporate depot review, whether the review of potential for mobile working and taking into account COVID and what we've learned about agile working from COVID, and finally regular review of building management performance data. When was that going to be done? Those are my 3 questions. If that's been dealt with in the new plan, fine.
Yes, that's correct. Sorry if there's any confusion.
Not my fault, that is.
So yes, that what I tried to do is to give an update on the actions that are in the old plan so that you could see where we were before we presented the new draft plan, if that makes sense.
Okay, yeah, thanks very much. Thanks, Lise.
Thanks, Kev. Any other questions? Councillor Gibbs?
Yeah, unfortunately, I got a couple of questions, and they're on the updates to the previous plan as well, Lisa. So if you bear with me, on page 38, number 11, implement energy management software to monitor all meter readings and establish a baseline. There's no current position. Could we just have a quick update of where we are there?
Yeah, hopefully Chris Jones is on the call, because he's going to pick up some of any queries in terms of energy.
Yeah, firstly, Ian Goldsworthy apologises he can't be here tonight. He's the expert, so I'm deputising for him today. So my words might not be the same as his, but what Ian's been doing, he's been fitting data loggers and water data loggers in all our as many buildings as we can. So we put in building management systems in data logs, so we can get hourly or half hourly, I think now, meter readings. So we can easily look at the energy, where it's being used, and we can pick out water leaks, for instance, if there's high energy use during night. So we're drilling things like that down. So that's what he's doing at the moment on energy consumption in the buildings and monitoring energy in our buildings.
Right, so those meters are already installed then, Chris, yeah?
We're in the process. We've done some buildings, but we know it's a rolling program. We're installing as soon as budget becomes available.
Yeah, excellent, thank you. And my next point was on number 14, consideration of property inspection regime. It's very similar to Lee's question on the previous report. You got good progress has been made in respect of an inspection regime for buildings. However, an inspection regime for non-operational land is proving more difficult, in part due to the historic nature of land and buildings and the lack of revenue budgets. Can you expand on that a little bit, please?
Yeah, so this is something that came up as a result of a report on our insurance policy, actually, and the fact that there was a risk essentially in terms of the lack of inspections, because as an authority we own a huge amount of property, and it isn't all operational. And when I say operational, I mean that it isn't necessarily used day to day by departments to deliver particular services. So a lot of it might be, surplus property. So they were raised as a risk, because obviously there's an insurance risk with managing those areas. And we didn't necessarily have a robust process in place to inspect those areas. So we started looking at whether there was any potential to have a formal process in place and to have resources so that those areas could be inspected regularly. Now, we didn't make a huge amount of progress in the period of the previous plan, and it's something that we still need to take forward. And I think there is an action in the new plan going forward for us to continue looking at that. So we've made a lot of progress in terms of the operational property. Schools and buildings that are being occupied, they were regularly being inspected and as part of our compliance processes. But the other land, I think there's still an issue around that, which is why we've got that as a new action going forward as well.
Lovely, thank you, Lisa. And my very last question, page 40, GIA is an acronym. What's that stand for?
Sorry, that's the gross internal area. So it's the internal area of a property. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Kev. Any other questions? No, I only have one. Kevin touched upon it. It's around consumption and the total carbon dioxide emissions in usage. How much data do we have to compare against over the last few years? And, has it been compared again, with COVID to see if our energy consumption has gone down drastically and carbon dioxide emissions as well?
Do you want me to take Ali's?
Yes, please, Chris. Thank you.
I know Ian's working really hard on this. We've got new targets. We've got to report to Welsh Government our carbon figures going forward. So obviously, I'm not sure how good the records were going back, but from now on, we haven't just got to report on our buildings, we've got to report on all our land and assets going forward to Welsh Government. Our procurement process is huge going forward with the carbon figures. Councillor Davis.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Yeah, if you can have a chat, and if that any of those figures are available, it'd be useful to see, I think. Alan?
Yeah, I'd just like to emphasise the importance, really, because from a building management perspective, decarbonisation, the whole carbon agenda, our maintenance regime. This is why this area is now becoming such a strategic, important priority that I think going into the next administration, Scrutiny needs to understand the critical corporate importance of how these service areas. I mean, Chris mentioned procurement, which is massive from a decarb perspective and a reporting perspective, how they all coming together into a very important corporate entity.
Thanks, Al. I think next administration and some training around the carbon issues and emissions will be really useful and vital as well. That's it for me. Any other questions? Any comments? I think it was so much to read today. I think everybody's done in. I think that was probably my fault adding the self-evaluation to this one as well. So apologies everyone for that. Okay, moving on. Agenda item 6, forward work program. Next month, the next meeting we have, which is the 26th of April, we just have one agenda item, sexual violence, having a report from New Pathways. I think you'll agree it was really useful last time. So they're coming in. I don't think there's anything else.
No other items on the forward work programme, Chair, and that's obviously the last committee of the year then.
Okay, great. Okay, any comments on that? Everybody okay? Yeah. Okay, agenda item 7, scrutiny referrals and feedback and follow-up. I don't have any. Safe, is there anything from you?
No, Chair, no referrals received from my end.
Okay, great. And then agenda item 8, reflection and evaluation of meeting. I'd like to thank everybody for coming and being honest and frank with us. I think it was really useful. I don't know if any other members feel any different or the same. No. No. Yeah, Jeff.
No, I was just going to echo your sentiments, Chair. To be honest with you, I think it's a lot of work and detail has been put into these reports, and as ever, Alan's departments have worked really hard putting this together, and they've answered, like I said, they've answered the questions truthfully and honestly, and this is what we'd like to see, is open and transparency as well. So, no, brilliant, guys. Thank you very much.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah, thank you everyone for coming today. Agenda item, I'll just move on to agenda item 9. Any other business? I don't have any. So thank you everyone, and I will see you soon. Take care, everyone.